range. 3-point range. Shoot your shot. Get that hot. Jump so high. Touch the sky. With a bat on that ghost sweat. 3-point range.
Well, as promised, we got the whole band together on the theme song this week, and I think it sounds great. Thanks again to Adam Zweiback and the Twice Baked Band for all of their efforts in making our theme song better and better. I mean, we are not worthy, but tune in next week when we may have a full symphony orchestra the way we're going. Welcome to 3-Point Range 2.0. Hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. I am the Professor Tim Crothers here in the fabulous Curtis Media Center Pod Studios in Chapel Hill. Alongside the prospect, Shelby Swanson, and the scout, Kimball Crosley, remote from his home, actually, in Providence, Rhode Island. Let's begin with the prospect, ripping her points straight from the weekend's headlines.
Yes, sir, and we're going to get straight into it. My points, and as you will see, all of our points tend to revolve a little bit around college football, so a little bit of a themed episode, if you will. My point is that flag planting, specifically after rivalry games, is unnecessary, predictable, and tired. And to back this up, I have three main arguments, one for each point in the Arizona State's Sun Devils trident that was planted in the middle of Arizona's field. Point number one, flag planting is a guaranteed recipe for fights with shoving and punches, and even as we saw, mace overshadowing the victory in the game. Point two, I don't think winning needs these cheap theatrics. Just celebrate with your fans, not by taunting the opponents. My final point, my third point, being that rivalries thrive on hatred, but also, I think, legacy and mutual respect to an extent, not these trite social media stunts and clip farming for viral moments. So, yeah, guys, thoughts on flag planting? Does it further the rivalry, or do you, like me, think that it's a bit of a cliche at this point?
Go ahead, Kimmel.
I would add rude to it.
Well, obviously, yeah, that's
but no, seriously,
part of the point.
like the way it's funny because the way I think about it is somebody that I coach basketball and I go into
Yes.
opposing arenas all the time, and it's something like it's their house, and I can see why like people would take offense. You already go in there, you beat them. Do you really need to rub it in their noses? I mean, is that really necessary? And I just think if nothing else, it's rude. When we win, it's just like, okay, thank you. Let's slink out of the gym and enjoy it on our own. We don't need to like rub it in their faces. And well put. It leads to a lot of other things, especially as it did this past weekend. And it's funny because some teams have started at the high school level. I don't know how this tradition started, but they like to take a post-game photo of after they win right there on the court. And I'm like, how about not on the court? How about anywhere but the court? Because fans, often the fans are gone. It's not like a giant arena and fans get out of there pretty fast. But, fans are lingering, and parents of children that just got beat are upset. It just opens that door. Like, go into the locker room, hoot and holler, take photos, celebrate all you want, get on the bus and go crazy, get home and go crazy. But you don't need to do it right there. When did you guys probably know, when did this start?
I'm gonna take it back to the first time it really became a national story was back in 2017, and our good friend Baker Mayfield at the Horseshoe. He was the first that I can remember to come out and try to plant the OU flag, which one thing I got to say is it's really dumb to plant a flag on an AstroTurf field.
Yep.
And Baker Mayfield found out that day when he just ran out. I can still remember the video, running out with the flag and planting it, and then seconds later it just fell flat on the field. And it was like, that really doesn't have a very good lasting effect. And I would say the same thing for 2 out of the 4 events yesterday where they tried to do it on an AstroTurf field here at Keenan Stadium, and again at the Horseshoe. It just doesn't work on an AstroTurf field. At least with the Trident, you could smash it into Arizona's logo and it sticks there. There's something, there's
Yes.
something a little bit more profound about that. But yeah, I think Baker Mayfield's never really been known as the classiest dude, so it doesn't really surprise me that he's the poster boy for this. But yes, that's where it began. But then it only on rare occasions since then, and then all of a sudden on Saturday, it starts happening, and this is a classic case in my view of what I call copycat stupidity. And I think we also saw it earlier this season with with fans throwing stuff on the field during the Georgia-Texas game. When there was a bad call, fans threw stuff on the field. They ended up changing the call. It was a big controversy, and sure enough, later on that night, it happened again at another stadium. And in the coming weeks after that, it started happening again and again and again. And I just was thinking, I was at the UNC-NC State game this weekend, and I was thinking as that was happening, that this never would have happened had it not happened earlier in the day. I mean, it was just one of these things that, oh, whoa, that seems kind of cool. Let's try to do that. And all of a sudden it starts happening everywhere. And I just thought from the beginning it was dumb, obviously. But the fact that we kind of live now in this society where people see a dumb thing and it goes viral and all of a sudden everyone wants to do it, is really, the whole thing is just dumb. But yeah, I mean, my feeling is, again, stay classy, act like you've been there.
Right.
You got you got what you wanted, as Kimball said, and get out of there. I will say it's funny. I worked, one of my other big time jobs aside from being a podcaster is I am one of the workers at the East Chapel Hill football stadium press box whenever there's a game played there that my daughter is involved in. And whenever we lose a game, my job is to take down the score off the scoreboard, just turn off the scoreboard immediately, because the trend, as you suggest, Kimball, is for a visiting team to take a photo in front of the scoreboard when they win. So the first thing I do when a game ends at our stadium when we lose the game is I just shut down the scoreboard so they can't take a picture of themselves in front of the scoreboard. But that's kind of where we've gotten in this sports world that we live in now, where it's not enough to just win. And I think it all goes back, honestly. I mean, think about it, Kimball. This is where we date ourselves, but there was a time when you could watch a football game and a guy could make a tackle and he wouldn't have to celebrate himself.
Yeah.
I mean,
ain't that the point? Aren't you supposed to?
It's I mean, and it happens now. I watch games and teams down by 28 and the guy will make a shoestring tackle and he'll get up and and he'll seat belt, he'll do something. And I'm just thinking, really? I mean, you couldn't just make a tackle and stand up and walk back to your side of the field?
Right.
I mean, it's gotten to a point where everything has to be
It's
celebrated.
like an outfielder catching a fly ball and then backflip. Okay, that's congrats, you made a routine play.
It's just gotten out of control, and I think I think we've just kind of accepted it now. The celebrating themselves is just, we don't even think twice about it. And to get a taunting penalty, you have to step over somebody or step on somebody to even think about
crazy.
It. But yeah, I mean, I'm not for the no fun league. I don't, I'm fine with people celebrating a touchdown in the NFL or in college football.
Love an end zone celebration.
Yeah, I'm all for it. But yeah, the difference is you celebrate with your teammates. Good. You start doing something that is offensive to the other team, that's the line. Then you've crossed the line. When you stab your trident into their field, yep, they have a right to pick up that trident and stab it right into you. So
okay, well, I wouldn't put it that far, but yeah. And I guess just going back to the point about, yeah, like the tendency of a lot of college football players now, especially to, celebrate after seems like every single play. Don't get it twisted. Like, I think it is fair for, defensive players should be allowed to celebrate because I'm saying, I love end zone celebrations, but just not after every single tackle, like routine tackles. Like, if you get a really big stop in the red zone, or, you force a 3 and out and like it's a big sack of the quarterback, like, yeah, celebrate. But I mean, it's some routine plays, and it just it gets out of hand, and also it's sort of, I think, diminishes the almost special nature of when those big plays do happen, if that makes sense. Class over chaos, act like you've been there. Teams that truly know how to win, I think, don't need gimmicks to, make a statement. And football, if anything, I mean, there's really no excuse for it because you literally get to just tackle guys throughout the game. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have enough of an opportunity to get your animosity and anger out when you're, literally beating each other up for 4 quarters. I don't know. And I mean, going back to the, kind of copycat attitude, and don't get it twisted. I think Davin Van, NC State, great player overall. Pretty classy guy, especially in terms of his, raising money for those affected by Hurricane Helene, all those things. But he was the one that went and, tried to plant the flag after the UNC game, and, literally said afterwards that ever since I saw Ben Finley do it, I think it was about 2 years ago, I wanted to do it. I wanted to do that real bad. It meant a lot. Again, it's these guys getting these images in their head, and they want to have the cool viral moment, the cool social media moments, instead of just, hey, why don't you take that flag and go and celebrate with all the fans that were going crazy in the stands, have a special moment, go back to the locker room, celebrate with those guys. Instead, you're literally interrupting, Dave Dorn and Mac Brown trying to embrace, and then you have 73-year-old Mac Brown breaking up fights. I mean, I thought he was gonna have a heart attack and die right there on that field. So, yeah, I don't know. I just, again, I see also the counter arguments, and it's good for the rivalry and things like that. But I think there are other things that you can do. You can keep the bragging rights. You can talk your shit for the remainder of the year, but there's no need to essentially go and flip a double bird to, the other team. Just win with some class, win with some pride.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things we do on 3 point range is solve problems in the sports world. And
All right,
honestly,
let's
I
do
don't.
it.
I mean, I'm open to your all's solutions before we move on to the next topic. I will tell you one way that won't solve it, and that's what the Big Ten did by fining Ohio State and Michigan $100,000 each
That's crazy.
for this incident. Something tells me that's not the solution. I just don't
Yeah.
think that
Pepper spraying players
that
isn't the solution
that
either.
sort of
That was
money
excessive.
is really going to change things the next time one of them has a chance to plant a flag. Um, but I'm open to solutions for how one might fix this. I mean, obviously after a game, it's kind of hard to take a piece out of either team. I do think that a great solution for solving, or well, solution for solving, for
Yes,
the
sir.
for the throwing stuff on the field during the game is to penalize the home team. Go ahead and 15-yard bench penalty on the home fans for
Yep.
throwing stuff on the field. I believe if that happened once, it wouldn't happen again.
Hmm.
Post game, it's a little tougher. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the solution is. Our vast numbers of listeners, maybe somebody out there has a good solution. Throw it up on one of our many
Yes. Let
many
us know.
many platforms, and if it's a good idea, we'll talk about it on the next 3 point range. All right, Kimball, what you got?
All right, Tim, you know me. You've known me for a long time. What have I always rooted for when it comes to college football?
Chaos.
Chaos, exactly, chaos. Well, after this weekend of football, we've already talked about some of the, post game chaos, but there was lots of chaos in terms of teams winning and losing. and how it affected the upcoming 12-team playoff, the first time ever 12-team playoff. And I just want to say now, I want to end the chaos and the insanity. This is too much. The rules committee has gone way too far with this 12-team playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Like in other sports, overinflated playoffs is counterproductive, and I believe this in just about every sport, including my own baseball. I don't think it really adds the real interest. It just adds like more mediocre teams in the hunt and more craziness and chaos. But I don't think it really adds to what you're trying to do, which I think you should be trying to do, which is decide a champion. Like let's we have a season to decide a champion, and I just feel this so strongly when I look at all sports. Like, there's a certain level of what is fair, and also what is fun, and what is like makes the season worthwhile, but also has a playoff, and and I just think that we're going to a dangerous point here with this, and I think the correct number, by the way, is eight.
I
Eight
agree.
is enough. For
Hmm.
years we had, the polls and none, and then two and four. Eight, eight is fine. And this is sort of an homage to Adams Wyback, who wrote our theme song and years ago wrote an essay about this, fixing the college football playoff system. And he basically said, the answer is so simple, you can put it on the back of a napkin. And it really is. And all you need to do is say, hey, you take 5 or 6 legit power conference champions, which you've decided like which are the worthy champions, and then you have 2 or 3 out at large bids, and you say that's it. And you set up a simple quarterfinal setup with 8 teams, and you say, guess what? If you're not good enough to win your conference, maybe you don't deserve to be a national champion. I'm sorry, that's the way it goes. And you might just have a little point system, a little way to decide the second team instead of a committee, which I just hate. I've always hated the objective committee, with their different like, points, and like, oh, today it's strength of schedule, today it's head to head, today it's this or that, the eye test. And it's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
like do it in what you do in high school sports, like have some predetermined system that it's never going to be fair. I mean, it's never like there's no real world idea of like who's really a worthy champion. You just have to have a system that you put in place at the beginning and say, hey, this is what you want to do. Take care of business. You have a couple ways to make it. One is to win your conference. Then maybe it's if you finish second in your conference, if you have enough points accumulated from strength of schedule and other things, then you get in. It's that simple. You don't need all these other things. And I just want to say that part of that solution, I get it, part of that solution, and I think this would be great. It's never going to happen because of money and TV and all that. Is guess what? You say to the conferences, you don't get 4 bids. I don't care if there's 8. I don't care if there's 4. I don't care if there's 16. You don't get 4 bids. This will limit the size of conferences. You say, you know what? You're getting maybe at least a runner up, a second bid. And now, guess what? You can't have a 16-team conference where teams don't even play each other, where like the 2 champions aren't even the best team, and the 2 finalists in their conference bowl game, or the conference champion is not even one of the better teams that's in the national race. And you just eliminate that. Say like, you know what? You can decide your champion one way, but we're taking your champion. And then maybe again with these 2 or 3 at-large bids, we might consider something else depending on how it goes. So I'm hoping maybe there's some disagreement because we're disagreeing too much. No one was for planting that flag. But come on, guys, what do you think of this?
Well, I'd say yes. I mean, I agree with you on 8, unfortunately, but I also can disagree with you by saying that there's no chance that it'll ever be 8. So why are we even talking about that? I mean, we all know that once you go to 12, you're not ever going back to 8.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yeah,
more
it's
likely
too
to go to
late.
16 than you are to 8 at this point. But I guess it gets me back to our dedicated listeners of 3 Point Range will remember a
Yes.
conversation we had during the 1.0 era, not too long ago during last season, when we said that the problem with the 12-team playoff is games like Ohio State and Michigan are not going to mean anything anymore. That instead of it being just this massive game that is going to decide usually the Big Ten champ and the representative in the playoff, now it's just not going to mean anything. Now, we never thought that Michigan would fall off the map like they did, but the fact is that that if you think about what the difference of had the game this year's game been played last year with the same circumstances, but a 4-team playoff, what the difference would have been. If
Right.
Ohio State had lost to Michigan in the way they did this year in last year's format, Ohio State would be out of the playoff. They would have gone from, possibly the number 1 seed to out of the playoff because they lost the game. And that is what we've lost. Now Ohio State, big deal. All right, so they're a 9 seed. And they'll still be in the playoff, and they still have a chance to win the national championship. The game didn't really mean that much to them, and the difference is massive. I mean, think about the fact that if that had happened the way I just talked about it, Ryan Day might not be the Ohio State football coach right now.
Which is crazy.
He might have been fired.
He needs to come to the ACC.
Well, I mean, my fake Theo and I were joking about the fact that if Ryan Day gets fired, the only job available right now
Hey, come on now.
in the Big Four
Ryan Day to UNC.
is at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, University of the People. And who knows? I mean, I just think if you just play the scenario out, it's not entirely impossible. Had we had this situation last year, that Ryan Day would be fired today and UNC would be courting him. Instead, Ryan Day is going to be preparing for a game, a 9 seed game, and or whatever they are, and if they win a couple of games, he's fine. If they don't, he could still be in trouble. But just the difference in how that number of playoff teams changes different scenarios. And I think you can also argue that there are games that would have meant nothing.
Yes.
That like an Alabama-Auburn, for instance, that Iron Bowl game would have meant nothing in a 14 playoff except for the rivalry. Now it does mean something. If Auburn beats Alabama, believe it or not, Alabama actually would have been out. And so that game would have meant nothing, and instead it does mean something.
Well, wait, you're saying it would have meant nothing because both teams would have already been out of a possible 14 playoff?
Correct. All that would
Yeah, but
all that
that's-
would mean is the rivalry. Yes.
Yeah, but that's not all it would mean. Like that becomes important, and that's what part of what we've lost. Is with these leagues that aren't even regional. Is you still feel good. You still have bragging rights when you win your league, when you win your rivalry game, and it doesn't matter that you weren't the best team in the country. You still can gloat for a whole year, plant a flag, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, we have people, teams fighting after the UNC-NC State game, and the teams are, a combined 500 on the season. I mean, it's still going to matter. I think, honestly, I would argue the opposite. I think in many ways the expanded playoff field has created more meaningful games late in the season just because more teams are vying for those postseason spots. And again, not that the rivalries necessarily need that because, again, people will literally get into, shoving matches after, going at 6-6. Anyways, but that being said, I think there are more unpredictable outcomes and a lot more shifts in terms of playoff positioning. And in my opinion, in addition to obviously the flag planting chaos, this November's been far more engaging than in the past, specifically from a national viewer standpoint. I don't really care about all of the rivalries as much as the local fans, but I'm curious to see how everything shakes out in terms of jockeying for the playoff positions. That being said, I think this past weekend has shown us that maybe there's a little more chaos than anticipated. Maybe the plan worked a little bit too well and the selection committee is going to have some issues, but I all in all am in favor of the expansion. I think it's made rivalry week a much more interesting watch just from the kind of, I guess, 2,000-foot view, or however you want to put it.
So you like the 12-team playoff?
Yeah.
You're for it.
How do you feel about the way it's set up? Where it's like how they seed it, so it's you can be like the fourth seed and you're nowhere near one of the best teams.
I mean, yeah, I'm still fine with that, honestly. I mean, I think that's the excitement that we see with, and I mean, certainly college football will never move to anything close to the field that you see for March Madness, but I mean, are people arguing against March Madness and what we see with men's basketball every year with, oh well, some of these 15, 16 seeds shouldn't even be in the conversation? Like, no, I'm just more games, more teams are in there, more fan bases buy in, more excitement. I'm just generally in favor of it.
Here's where we disagree.
Okay, let's go.
Right.
Here's where we disagree. I just saw one of the latest mock brackets with SMU and Boise State in the top 4. Does anybody really think SMU and Boise are two of the
No.
two of the best 4 teams in the country? Come on. So, yeah, I am not for it. I'm not for the way they've set it up, because I just don't. Yeah, I don't think that those 2 teams deserve to be getting buys. I think they're not. They're not two of the top 4 teams. So, where you mentioned March Madness, Shelby, I think that's the way we should seed the college football playoff as well. I think March Madness, we say, okay, you conference,
looking more at like
you conference
strength of
champion,
schedule
yeah.
versus just
Yeah, I mean,
if you're
basically an
conference champion,
RPI kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
You get the we're gonna let Boise State into the thing for winning their conference championship, but if it was March Madness, that
It
doesn't
shouldn't be
mean
a bye.
we wouldn't
I see
give them
what
a
you're
number
saying.
1
I see what you're
seed,
saying.
and we're going to give you the seed you deserve based on where we think you actually are in terms of talent relative to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think I want the college football playoff seeded by some sort of system that basically reflects the RPI, how good these teams really are, and SMU and Boise should be playing first round games,
Right.
in my opinion. What do you think, Kimball?
That one's a little trickier, but because I do want to set up some sort of like, I think with my whole thing about the conferences, that's where that falls apart, because
Right.
you when
Then you're
you
just
have
treating
fi-
conferences
5 of
differently.
the best teams are in one conference, but again, I'm saying like, well, we shouldn't allow these conferences to be so big and gluttonous like that. We should sort of
Yeah,
try
well,
and
that ain't happening.
police
I fear.
that. No,
I fear that's the way we're moving.
That
So let's.
cat,
That ain't
that
happening.
cat
I
is
know.
out the
We're
bag.
far past
I
that.
know. Well, maybe in some ways it will happen, like when they realize how ridiculous it is that, like, these teams from the West Coast are in the ACC and how it affects other sports. It's crazy. And it also, I think over time it will hurt the product, because there is something to, as you said, NC State, UNC, that's been going on for years. Well, it's not like Stanford fans are like, I'm going to fly out, to the East Coast and see this, or it's ridiculous. But let me just say that my final thought on this is, I don't think more teams involved means better. To me, it's bubblegum. It's NCAA bubblegum. It's when the basketball tournament happens every year and we have these, there's 10 teams on the bubble. I'm like, the hell with them. They suck. Like, even if they can go in and make a run, they don't deserve it. You don't get, if you finish below 500 in your conference, I'm sorry, you don't, maybe you have this interesting good team in a way, but you haven't earned it. You haven't earned it. You can't even win half your conference games. Go home. Go home. And again, it comes from these giant conferences where they have all the best teams. And I don't like it. I wish there was like, it was cleaner, but I get it. It's not going to happen.
I will also say, like, I think
Unless
it's
this podcast really starts taking root.
yeah. I will without taking too much more time, because I know we want to move on to our last point. I will just say, like, I think it's important also to note just the razor thin margin, that separates a victory versus a loss, especially in college football. Just if you look at, I mean, it's pretty obvious take, but the number of games that are played in a college football season versus a basketball season, like I think that you get a much better feel for a team, and across the course of a basketball season, a team has a lot of chances to prove, how good they are, how bad they truly are. Whereas with football, I think that's again like, these two lost teams, these three lost teams, should be in the mix. But when it comes down to, I mean, let's take that Georgia Tech game for instance. Yeah, you chalk it up as a win for Georgia, but I mean, should that really count as a win? I mean, you're playing against future engineers here. Like, anyways, that's just how I feel.
I think it's a good point. I mean, I have come to the conclusion that we've expanded a playoff system for a sport that doesn't have any good teams. I mean, I'm like, who is actually good? I mean, Georgia is also in the top 4 in that mock playoff thing I just looked at. And Georgia, as you suggest, just needed 8 overtimes to beat a decent ACC team.
Right.
And and then SMU's another one, and Boise's another one. I mean, obviously Oregon's a little hard to attack because they're undefeated, but they probably should have lost that game at home to Ohio State, who just lost to a miserable Michigan team. So I kind of feel like, ask yourself, who is actually good? And we may be, we're really going to be watching a 12-team playoff contested by 11 decent teams and maybe one good team if Oregon's really, really good. I don't know. But it's just something to think about. All right. Third point.
Let's get it.
'Tis the season. 'Tis the season.
Oh, God.
Not the season you're thinking of, the season we're all about to enjoy.
I'm about to enjoy it.
But it's the season of the opt-out. And I guess I'm the Grinch in this scenario, but we are going to hear in the coming days about all of the players, all the college football players who are going to be like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to play in the bowl game. I'm fine with what I've done so far, and I do not want to get hurt. And I cannot blame them. A little history lesson for those of you who aren't really familiar with the opt-out situation. It actually began back in 2016 with 2 players, Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, both opted out of their bowl games, and everybody went, "Oh my gosh, the sky is falling. These 2 guys are abandoning their teams. Ugh, how dare they?" Well, less than a decade later, we're like, yeah, opt-outs, big deal. Last year, Florida State gets snubbed by the committee. 24 of their players opted out. 24. They're just like, nah, you screwed us. We're not gonna play. And so they lost 63-3 to Georgia in the Orange Bowl last year. But nobody freaked out that all these guys were opting out. I mean, this was less than 10 years since it first happened. Nobody freaked out. Nobody said, "Oh, I can't believe these guys are opting out." It was like most of the time when people opt out now, they think, yeah, that's actually probably smart. So I'm going to open Pandora's box. This is going to be crazy. Prepare to have your minds blown.
Oh, God.
I don't think that guys should even wait to the bowl games to opt out.
No, that's crazy. I'm not with that.
Well, hear me
I'm
out.
not with that.
Hear me out.
Hear me out.
We have a great example here on our own campus. A gentleman by the name of Omarion Hampton, who is our best running back in a long time, arguably one of the best we've ever had. And if you look at the mock drafts, he's going to be drafted somewhere between mid-first round and maybe very early second round. We're talking like $5 million a year contract. And I will say to you, why did Omarion Hampton, I don't know if he's going to play in a bowl game, but why did he even play in the game against NC State? Why did he even play in the game before that against Boston College? The team's goals were lost back on October 12th when they lost their 3rd game in a row to Georgia Tech on that particular day. And all of the team goals at that point were lost. They had no chance for a conference championship, no chance for anything anymore. And Omarion Hampton, for those of you who know him as a player, knows that he has absolutely no care for his own safety. He is just a bowling ball, an absolute crazy man out there, and good for him. I mean, he's fun to watch. But he is also an injury risk. And I'm saying, why would Omarion Hampton, once the season's goals have been lost, why would Omarion Hampton continue to play? Now, let me share that I did a little research on this. I had one of Hampton's teammates in my class speaking last week. His name is JJ Jones, and I asked JJ straight up. I said, JJ, here's my thoughts on Omarion Hampton. Why would he keep playing? And he said, well, I don't think Omarion will opt out. I don't think he'll opt out of the bowl because he cares too much about his teammates. And then I said to JJ, well, what about you? JJ's a draft eligible player who will probably get drafted. And I said, what about you? And he said, well, I'm not opting out because I feel like I need to keep playing to improve my draft stock. That I get. I get that. If you are a 5th round pick and you might improve your draft stock by having a huge game in a bowl, I'm all in. But if you're Omarion Hampton and your draft stock is not likely to be improved very much, if at all, by continuing to play, I don't understand why you don't quit midway through the season. And I think that that's going to happen sometime soon. I think sometime soon somebody's going to do that. And I think we're going to look at it as just like we did Christian McCaffrey. People are going to go, oh my God, I can't believe he opted out with a game left in the regular season. And then the next year, a few guys are going to do it. And the next year, a few more guys are going to do it. And before long, we're not even going to be thinking twice about it. There you go. Mind's blown. What do you think?
Wow. Well, there's something about your contract, and I don't know how these NIL things work, but I mean, that's got to come into it at some point, right? I mean, they're getting
Well,
paid to play the game.
That's some guy. It depends on your NIL deal. Yes. I mean, I think there's going to come a time not too long down the road where this might be solved simply by, yes, universities are going to start just writing up contracts with their players. And in those contracts, you can write up the fact that you're going to play the whole season and the bowl game. But that's not the case right now. And I'm saying until that happens, unless you have an NIL deal that stipulates that you're playing in a bowl game, you're an idiot to keep playing. I just don't think. All would have to happen is Omarion Hampton would have had to have been injured, and I wish him the best. I wish no ill will on Omarion Hampton. But if he had been injured in that NC State game and lost for next year's draft, how could you possibly justify playing? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you brought up the aspect of the like NIL contracts and like how does that factor in. I know that's in I think it was May this year, Heather Dinich, ESPN senior editor, I believe an SJI alum, shout out, reported about bowl leaders that were advocating for collective bargaining agreements with college athletes to reduce the number of postseason opt-outs. So again, that was, I think, and I'm pulling it up, but Nick Carparelli, who's the executive director of bowl season, he was basically saying that if players sign contracts for NIL, they could be required to fulfill duties like playing in bowl games, again, similar to regular season obligations. So I think we will see that. That being said, I think, you guys bring up a good point about NIL contracts, especially as we move up, we're on the brink of the revenue sharing era. So I would say, I don't think you're going to see those regular season opt-outs because, again, these players are going to be contractually obligated essentially to play. Well, actually, I go one of two ways on that. One, I know a big part of the NIL contracts essentially you're signing your NIL rights to one school, and the whole point of that is to prevent transferring. So you couldn't leave mid-season and then go to another school or like engage with another school, basically trying to prevent like the BC quarterback kind of like situation, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess actually I'm taken aback. I don't know currently the way that those contracts are structured, what that would do if you were just to opt out end of season, not to like leave for another team, but to go pro. I'm not sure, but I don't know, something about just the way that we're moving in terms of um players at the college level becoming more and more like employees, and where we stand on a contractual basis. I just don't think you're going to see it. I tend to, you know, argue against this like opt out culture specifically in the regular season, just due to again like a commitment you make to a team. I think with a bowl game it's slightly different, because if you're not in the CFP and you're not in a high level bowl, I mean, like the Pop Tarts Bowl and a lot of these things, like they really don't have any meaning, especially let's say like this bowl in particular for UNC, where your head coach is sacked. You don't really know what's going on. Interim head coach. I mean, I get again a JJ Jones staying to increase the draft prospects, but if I'm Amari Hampton, like you're not even. This isn't even like the coach that you signed on to play for. Um, anyways, yeah, but I will just push back a little bit. I think that the way that we're moving in terms of NIL contracts, CBAs will play a really important role in shaping the decision making of these college football players, and with some financial incentive or, literally just, you know, a signature on the dotted line preventing them from doing this, I think that may like poke a hole a little bit in this argument that you're making about like the trend that we're about to see in earlier and earlier opt-outs.
And let me say this on like sort of a broader sports concept. You know, we want to play games. We choose to play games, right? Like, when we're playing pickup basketball, it's not like, I don't want to play in this game because maybe next week I have a more important game. Like, we
Right.
want to play.
You
And
don't have
then
5 mil on the
I
line.
I know, and
It's
that
true.
does make it. That does make it. That's the tricky part. Like especially when it's so obvious. Like when it's a college football player that knows he's going to be drafted. And yes, you're right. But in so many cases, it's just the thing that Shelby alluded to. But I think it's even stronger. You know, we haven't just made a commitment to a team, but when you're on a team, and this is like going back to the bowls and what are you playing for? Like any team you're on, when you start the season, part of just practicing and playing is you just want to get better. You want to get better as an individual and as a team. So even when you're 3-8 and you're playing for nothing, you go into that last game saying like, hey, let's see if we can do better at all the stupid things we've been working on for the last
Yeah.
50 days, 100 days. And there's this collective, and again, that's why you play sports at like every level. That's part of it. And so I think that hopefully at least especially a college football team, when you put in so much work, that you get to a bowl game, it's like that's what you want to prove, that you've built your whole season to play well in that damn game, individually and collectively. But yes, it is tricky when somebody like knows like, hey, this is a $10 million moment for me, like the difference between me being set for life and not.
Yeah, it's also just an underlying like social kind of contract where, if you're, especially in the case of Amari and Hampton, for instance, right? I mean, he literally did take a essentially pay cut, right, in terms of what he could have been making at other schools in NIL to stay at UNC. And obviously, I mean, UNC is also, paying him, or via the collective at least. But that being said, I mean, a big part of it, my understanding is just, speaking to the family and a little bit to Amari, and he doesn't, talk too much, but he just loves UNC. He's made friendships with his teammates and things like that. And so if you just think about, again, like the underlying social contract of, okay, these are my, best friends. I'm in, the trenches with them day by day. And I'm just gonna, dip out because we lose a few games. Like, I, I don't know. I think anybody with some class wouldn't do that. And again, it really comes down to how much I think the team as a whole like values each game. That's why I think that because bowl games have become so devalued, it's not as big of a deal, and teammates will understand if you opt out. But I mean, the thought of like Amari and Hampton just stepping away before the NC State game, the rivalry game that supposedly this team worked so hard towards throughout the course of the season, I think is just unfathomable. Like there's just no way that anybody who has bought in truly to the team and has put their body on the line in terms of just the snap counts this guy is taking. I mean, he clearly has like no regard for his health, like in terms of just some of the performances he's put up. Could he maybe look out for himself like a little bit more and have Goss come in as backup some more? Yes, and the team's been doing that, but yeah, I don't know. I think we're kind of overlooking just again the overlying social contract, the idea of just not backing out on your team, on your friends, and I think that's really, really important in any team sport or just sport in general.
Sarah, do you have a handkerchief that you could loan me, because I'm welling up. I'm getting a little bit. I'm getting a little bit
All right, calm down.
verklempt over this loyalty. Oh, loyalty in sports. What?
Yes.
Loyalty?
Yes.
I mean, you could break that NIL contract, which is a mere pittance compared to his NFL deal, if you really wanted to. You just say, you know what? All right, I'll break my contract, because my Omarion Hampton's NIL deal isn't going to be close to his rookie contract. So if you're talking about pure
although
money,
running backs have been increasingly devalued over the years at the NFL level. And
it's a $5 million a year contract for a while. That is a heck of a lot more than he's making in NIL. So,
that's true.
So that argument, I'm not necessarily buying. And just, the two of you just waxing poetic about loyalty in sports. Since when? Since when? In the era of the transfer portal? Are you kidding me? Loyalty? Yes. I mean, I love the fact that Omarion decided to stay. Good for him. I love the fact that J.J. Jones is saying that both of them are going to play in that bowl game no matter what, because they love their team. But loyalty, schmoyalty.
Okay, here's my question, though. Are you saying that we will see more opt-outs in terms of, like, pushing it back to regular season, or we should? Because those are two different arguments.
Well, I mean, yes, I'm saying we should, and I think we will if we don't.
You think
if
it is
the
good
rules
for the
aren't
game?
changed? If the rules aren't changed, that teams are not signing their guys to their own contracts in-house that include a bowl game. But even then, as I said, you could break that contract knowing full well that you're going to make more money being healthy and getting to the draft than you are playing in the bowl game. So, yeah, I mean, should and will if enough time passes. I think it will happen. But we all know that on the first two podcasts this year, I've predicted success for UNC field hockey and UConn basketball. And neither of those has gone terribly well so far. So,
Brothers endorsements.
I might say why not, but yeah, loyalty, schmoyalty. I mean, truth is, if I'd made the first point on this podcast, I would have opted out of the rest of the podcast just to save my voice.
Crazy. That's crazy.
That's how loyal I am.
Okay,
so.
In all fairness, I mean, you're beating yourself up a little bit, but in all fairness, you did predict a UConn three-peat, and in a sense, the Huskies did deliver a three-peat in Maui.
There you go.
Of a different kind, right?
And it's I'm standing by the fact that is all part of Danny Hurley's diabolical plan for his three-peat, and that prediction isn't wrong yet. It's not wrong yet.
The narrative arc of the season.
It's not wrong yet. Not wrong yet. Well, it's been a pleasure, as always.
Truly.
Thank you to our incomparable executive producer, Sarah Ellis, for making us sound better than we actually are. And for the scout, Kimball Crossley. And the prospect, Shelby Swanson. I'm the professor, Tim Crothers, pulling up from well behind the arc. And onions!